Venezuela's different political parties are closing their election campaigns this Wednesday ahead of Sunday's regional and municipal polls. The president of the National Electoral Council highlighted the broad political participation in this electoral process. Bolivian social movements mobilized in defense of democracy as the government of President Luis Arce assesses the damage to the economy caused by protests promoted by far-right opposition sectors. Israel launched a missile attack against the Syrian capital Damascus. Meanwhile, 2 explosions were reported in Afghanistan. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is from the south. I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Venezuela, where campaigns are drawing to a close in several regions ahead of Sunday's elections. The candidates of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela and the Great Patriotic Pole Alliance held rallies in municipalities in the western state of Syria. Party members and supporters expressed their support for the re-election of the current state governor as well as mayors. Political leaders recalled that, in their opinion, these elections not only provide an opportunity to measure themselves against their political opponents, but also to reject the US sanctions imposed on the country. Likewise, the candidates of opposition parties in the western state of Syria rallied with their supporters in the city of Maracaibo. They called on their members to exercise their right to vote and assured that the process is very simple to follow. As part of the closing events of their campaigns, candidates highlighted their commitment and willingness to work to improve public services. As mentioned, Venezuela is in the final stage of preparations for the regional and municipal elections of this Sunday, November 21st. As the different political parties and alliances wind down their campaigns, our correspondent Brian Mayer brings us details of the situation on the ground in Caracas.
I'm standing in Caracas, Venezuela, on the second-to-last day of campaigning for this Sunday's regional elections, in which over 20 million people are expected to go out to the polls to vote for over 70,000 candidates for 3,084 positions in city councils, mayor's offices, governors, and state legislation. Now, this is an important election for several reasons. First of all, it marks the first time that the European Union is sending election observers since 2006. There's over 100 election observers from the EU who are arriving, as well as observers from Democratic Socialists of America and other groups who are all coming the Carter Center to verify that the elections are being conducted free and fairly, and all signs so far show that they are. Another reason these elections are important is it represents the return of the MUD coalition, of which Juan Guaido is a part of, to the Venezuelan elections. They've boycotted the last 3 elections, and their return is creating more division among the right. Of all candidates running, 96% of them are from opposition parties on the right or the left of the PSUV. So the expectation is that once again this Sunday there's going to be a victory for the Chavista ruling coalition, the PSUV Plus, or the Gran Polo Patrioto. And this represents a continuing support by the vast majority of the Venezuelan people for the Bolivarian project that was initiated by the late Hugo Chavez.
The president of Venezuela's National Electoral Council, Pedro Calzadilla, met with the country's diplomatic corps prior to the regional and municipal elections of this Sunday, November 21st. During the meeting, the electoral official reiterated the democratic environment of broad political participation in this electoral process.
Most of the political parties have candidates aspiring to the different positions, a political atmosphere of calm and peace. You live here and you have seen this. Rallies, electoral campaign events, as happens everywhere. Political meetings, as occurs in republics, in places where democracy is the guide that organizes and structures life.
And the president of the Venezuelan Electoral Authority also assured that everything is ready for these elections, which will demonstrate the unshakable will of the Venezuelan people to live in peace and democracy.
The table is set, everything is ready, everything is in place, just hours away from the election. We want to tell you, your governments, your countries, the peoples you represent, that life in democracy, life in peace, is reaffirmed in Venezuela.
In Bolivia, a meeting of social movements in defense of democracy was held while the government of President Luis Arce assesses the damage to the economy caused by protests and strikes promoted by far-right opposition sectors. The massive event, held on the highway that connects El Alto and La Paz, saw the participation of multiple social sectors led by the Bolivian Workers' Confederation. During the day, activists committed themselves to defending the country's governability in the midst of attempts at destabilization promoted by the far right and condemned by the majority of the population. Meanwhile, the government is assessing the damages caused by the strike promoted by opposition sectors, a move which has been denounced as part of a renewed strategy to oust the current government of President Luis Arce. Various social movements in El Salvador have rejected the proposed law on foreign agents promoted by the national government, which they stress represents a move to suffocate civil society groups. Mobilizations were called on Wednesday against the bill proposed by President Nayib Bukele, requiring people and organizations who receive foreign funding to register as foreign agents, following the lead of countries like the United States. The legislative proposal also includes a tax of at least 40% for organizations that operate with foreign capital. The rules would apply to a broad range of organizations and individuals, including media outlets and individual journalists, sparking fears over press freedom. On Tuesday, Guatemala's police conducted forced and violent evictions of a Mayan indigenous community. According to local news media, some 96 families were forced to flee to mountainous areas. The eviction order signed by Judge Anibal Artiega responds to a complaint filed by the company Naturaceites, a palm oil consortium that claims ownership of the lands where the communities live, which they stress are ancestral territories. Community members have denounced harassment by the company. In Guatemala, over 180 hectares are dedicated to palm oil cultivation. Palm oil is used in the cosmetics industry as well as in the manufacture of instant foods and candies. And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. As part of his tour through Europe, former Brazilian President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva was hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron in what some described as a dig at far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, with whom Macron has exchanged strong words. The head of the Workers' Party has been holding meetings with political and social leaders as part of a tour of Europe to strengthen ties with the European left. In Belgium, he joined a debate in the European Parliament and spoke with social democratic leaders. During his visit to France, Lula da Silva attended a conference on Brazil at the Institute of Political Studies in Paris. The meeting took place in the framework of the 10th anniversary of Lula being the first Latin American leader to receive an honorary doctorate from the institution, one of the most respected in the world. The former trade unionist and president, who's polling far ahead of Bolsonaro even though he's yet to confirm another presidential bid, stated that the country is being destroyed and isolated by the far-right leader.
Political and diplomatic isolation is harmful not only for our country, but also for the community of nations. I dare say that our active political participation in the major global forums is very much needed in the world. The world is still living through the great crisis caused by the pandemic, as it happened after the other great crisis. It is necessary to rebuild the international institutions on 9 bases. We cannot continue to be governed by the system created by the Second World War.
The Belarus State Border Committee denounced on Wednesday direct aggressions after Polish forces fired tear gas and water cannons at asylum seekers trying to cross the border into the EU member state.
The shelling of unarmed people on the Belarusian side with stun grenades is a flagrant violation of international norms, including the rights of migrants seeking asylum. What happened can be regarded as an attempt at direct aggression against the Republic of Belarus. The State Border Committee sent a request to the Polish side with the requirement to provide clarifications on the facts of the use of violence, special means and equipment against refugees located on the territory of Belarus.
Belarusian forces moved asylum seekers to a warehouse offering desperate families humanitarian aid after having been attacked by Polish border agents on attempting to enter the neighbouring country. The move from the Belarusian authorities seeks to ease pressure along the country's border with Poland and ensure the people who have gathered there in freezing temperatures are protected from risks. Hundreds of asylum seekers are now being sheltered in a brick warehouse a few hundred yards from the border crossing, representing much-needed relief for scores of families who spent weeks camped in freezing and fetid fields with little more than the clothes on their backs. Meanwhile, the European Union seeks to blame Belarus for the situation, rather than work to meet the humanitarian needs of people seeking to enter the bloc. Sweden will introduce a COVID-19 vaccination pass on December 1st for public indoor events of more than 100 people as cases rise in much of Europe.
The Public Health Agency now sees a need to take further measures to prevent unvaccinated people from congregating in large groups. It wants public gathering and public indoors events of more than 100 people to be restricted. If vaccination certificates are used, the restrictions should not apply.
Daily COVID-19 infections rose to new records in the Czech Republic a day before the government was set to approve new restrictions to tackle the recent wave. On Wednesday, the country's health ministry announced more than 22,000 new cases reported in a single day. This represents almost 5,000 cases more than the country's previous daily record set in January of this year. Cases had been rising to past 14,000 last week. As a result, there was also an increase in the numbers of hospitalizations and COVID-related deaths. The Czech Republic is currently one of the hardest hit countries in Europe, as the increase in case numbers parallels a recent wave of infections within neighbouring countries. On Wednesday, the Philippines received another shipment of over 3.5 million doses of China's coronavac shots. The vaccines were purchased through the Asian Development Bank and were received at the Manila International Airport by China's ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xiyan, as well as Carlito Galvez, the chief implementer of the Philippines COVID-19 National Task Force. The shipment was couriered by Philippine Airlines. The country's Food and Drug Administration has approved the use of China's Sinovac vaccine as booster shots against COVID-19. China has continuously provided vaccines to the Philippines since the first delivery on February 28th.
I could vividly remember that the president is very, very happy seeing the Chinese aircraft, government aircraft, military aircraft, with their servicemen pushing the life-saving vaccines that will greatly give so much hope to our people.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Israel launched 2 missiles against the south of the Syrian capital Damascus in the latest attack against the country. The missiles were launched from the occupied Syrian Golan Heights against the southern area of Damascus, according to Syrian news agency SANA. The 2 missiles were fired in the early hours of Wednesday morning and targeted an empty building, which was hit by one missile, while the other was intercepted and shot down by the Syrian army's air defense system before hitting its target. The Israeli air offensive did not cause any major damage or casualties. Israel has launched regular attacks against Syria from the occupied territory of the Golan Heights, with an escalation in attacks as the Syrian government advances in eliminating Western-backed terrorist groups from its territory. 2 explosions hit the Afghan capital Kabul on Wednesday, killing at least 1 person and wounding at least 6, including 3 women. According to an Interior Ministry spokesman, the first attack was a car bomb blast in Dashti-Bachi, a predominantly Shiite Muslim area in western Kabul. A second explosion was reported in the nearby Khartis area, where security forces were still gathering information. The explosions are part of a series of blasts that hit the Afghan capital in recent days, with Shiite communities in the west of the city targeted several times. There was no claim of responsibility, but ISIS extremists have claimed several attacks on similar targets, including mosques. The Taliban has called on United States Congress members to release Afghan assets frozen after their return to power, warning economic turmoil at home could lead to trouble abroad. On Wednesday, Taliban Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi stated the biggest challenge facing Afghanistan was financial insecurity, and the roots of this concern lead back to the freezing of assets by the US government. The minister warned that the economic situation will fuel mass migration in the region and the world if not addressed, consequently creating further humanitarian and economic issues for other nations. Washington has seized nearly $9.5 billion in assets belonging to the Afghan Central Bank. The aid-dependent economy has effectively collapsed, with civil servants unpaid for months and the Treasury unable to pay for imports. In Sudan, several anti-coup protesters were reported to have been killed by security forces as thousands rallied this Wednesday in the cities of Omdurman and Bahri. The protests came in response to the military seizure of power on October 25th. Thousands of people took to the streets on Wednesday as security forces were deployed in the capital, Khartoum. According to reports, live bullets and tear gas were fired to disperse demonstrators, while mobile phone communications were cut off earlier in the day. The latest fatalities take the death toll in the anti-coup protests to 38, while dozens have been wounded. Protesters are demanding a full handover to civilian rule and for the coup leaders to be tried in court. The international community has condemned the military takeover and cancelled aid to the country, while demanding a swift return to civilian rule. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Xiao Lishan declared on Wednesday that the meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden was constructive and fruitful and has sent a powerful signal to the international community.
Yesterday morning, President Xi Jinping and President Biden had a virtual meeting. Both leaders believed that the meeting was frank, constructive, substantive, and fruitful. It helps enhance mutual understanding and increase the international community's positive expectation of Sino-US relations. It has sent a powerful signal to China, the United States, and the world. The two sides agreed to continue to maintain close ties through various means to push China-US relations back to the right track, featuring healthy and stable development so as to benefit the people of China and the US, and all people around the world.
The Pakistani city of Lahore was declared the most polluted city in the world by an air quality monitor on Wednesday, as residents choking in smog pleaded with officials to take action. Lahore had an air quality ranking of 348, well over the hazardous level of 300, according to IQ Air, the Swiss technology company that operates the air visual monitoring platform. Air pollution has worsened in Pakistan in recent years as a mixture of low-grade diesel fumes, smoke from seasonal crop burn-off, and colder winter temperatures merge into stagnant clouds of smog. In recent years, residents have built their own air purifiers and taken out lawsuits against government officials in desperate bids to clean the air, but authorities have been slow to act, blaming the smog on India or claiming the figures are exaggerated.
There is so much smog and pollution here. I used to come for a walk with my children previously, but now I don't bring them out with me. Children are experiencing breathing-related illnesses. We appeal to the government, for God's sake, find a solution. There are factories and small industries operating here. Keep them somewhere else or give them compensation or provide them with modern technology so we can get rid of this smog.
The Commission for Air Quality Management for New Delhi has shut down schools until further notice, urged people to work from home and banned non-essential trucks from entering the Indian capital due to dangerous levels of air pollution. The order came days after the Delhi government pushed back against the call by India's Supreme Court to declare a pollution lockdown. According to the Lancet Medical Journal, almost 18,000 people died in Delhi in 2019 because of air pollution, and a report by Swiss organisation IQ Air last year found that 22 of the world's 30 most polluted cities were in India. We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.